Attacks on students, mob lynchings, and escalation in hate crimes, and the mainstreaming of a hardline brand of Hindu nationalism. These have all been features of India under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose party lost a key election in Delhi this week. Yet few celebrities have spoken out against Modi or the rise in intolerance. Many of them instead are big supporters of the Prime Minister. But today we're joined by two of the biggest names in Bollywood who haven't been shy to make their voices heard. Javed Akhtar is an acclaimed screenwriter, songwriter and poet, as well as a former member of India's upper house of parliament. And Mahesh Bhatt is one of India's best-known film directors and producers, who's directed over 50 films since his career began in 1974. Javed Akhtar, Mahesh Bhatt, thank you both for joining me on UpFront. Javed Akhtar, let me start with you. How bad, actually, is the situation in India today, in your view, in terms of rising nationalism, bigotry, authoritarianism?
Well, if I look around in this world, there are places which are much worse. But the fact is that situation in India, without looking outside, I can say was never so dark as it is today.
And Mahesh Bhatt, would you agree with that? How much is the India that once touted its secular, pluralistic, multi-faith credentials, the India that you and Javed grew up in, how much of that India is gone, do you think?
Well, it was called the mother of civilizations. It was the land which gave birth to people like Nanak and the Mahatma Gandhi. And the fact is that what Javed Saab just said is that it couldn't have been worse. And the night is only deepening. We have had a ray of hope just a few days ago when the BJP got a drubbing when they lost the election to Arvind Kejriwal's Aam Aadmi Party. But that's just one little ray of hope.
Mahesh, but you said in the past that fascism is, quote, alive and well in the land of the Mahatma. What would you say to critics who say that's hyperbole, that's an exaggeration? India is a democratic country. Narendra Modi won his majority last year fair and square.
Well, I would say that they conveniently look away from that explosive silence. The Muslims of my country, and not only the Muslims, even the other minorities, have never felt more insecure as they feel now. If they choose to turn their face away from this naked truth, it's their privilege, but they do India a lot of harm. When people are frightened to speak, when people worry about what's going to happen next, there's palpable anxiety in the air. And if they do not want to see it, it's their tragedy. They will have to take stock of the situation and act with urgency.
Javed Akhtar, Mahesh Bhatt mentioned Muslims and other minorities and the fear that they have. Just in the past year alone, since Modi's re-election, we've had the citizenship law, which for the first time introduces a religion test for immigrants, for refugees from neighboring countries. Everyone except Muslims are eligible. You have a registry of citizens in Assam, which has excluded nearly 2 million people, many of them Muslims, from the citizenship list. You have the Supreme Court decision, which allows for the building of a Hindu temple on a disputed religious site, the site of a mosque that was destroyed by Hindu nationalists. All of that just in the past year. Is it fair to say that Muslims in India now feel like they're in the firing line?
As a matter of fact, as long as we will consider it a Muslim problem, a problem of minorities, we will not be able to understand it. This is the problem of India, and this is the problem of Indians. You see, Muslims can be a stepping stone to reach the platform where some people want to reach. But they are not there, and they can be the means. The fact is that this threat or this silence that Mahesh was talking about is not only on Muslims. I mean, it's in the majority community also. People are intimidated. The fact is that when you look around, we see that scope or a space for dissension is shrinking by the day. Today, there is hardly any TV channel in India that openly criticizes the present regime. It was not so 6 years back.
Indeed. So let me bring in Mahesh Bhatt here. The reality is, as you well know, that the BJP and the RSS, the ideological force behind the BJP, the paramilitary group that forms a lot of the ideological backbone of the BJP, has been very anti-Muslim for many decades now. And when you look at what's happening in, for example, Kashmir, which was India's only Muslim majority state before the government went along and basically broke it up a few months ago and has put it under siege. You can understand why Muslims in India and Muslims around the world are looking at India and saying, what is going on here in terms of Islamophobia, anti-Muslim bigotry, anti-Muslim hate, especially when you look at, for example, the situation in Kashmir?
Well, I think Islamophobia, the winds of Islamophobia blew through the world after 9/11. And I think the phobia here is manufactured because I don't think that the average Indian is so frightened of a Muslim. I mean, that kind of a fear has been crafted, been structured day in and day out. Media person go out there, the pliable channels are working around the clock to create the other. They need the other to stay in power, and to hate the Muslim is the lifeline of the BJP. Let's not mince our words. There is institutional bias which has been there since the dawn of time. I mean, since the birth of the nation. But now it is naked. The mask is off, and they are doing it right under their nose.
And Javed Akhtar, Mahesh Bhatt says the mask is off. Narendra Modi won a second term. He's escalated his, I don't know what you want to call it, campaign of dominance, of authoritarianism, of consolidation of power for his party and for his movement. What's interesting about Modi is many people here in the United States, where I am, for example, like to compare Modi and Trump. Trump doesn't actually believe anything, whereas Modi is a lifelong ideologue. He's been in the RSS since he was a child. How dangerous a leader do you think Narendra Modi is?
Let's not simplify these things. It is like believing that Hitler only hated Jews, otherwise everything was hunky-dory. He was very happy with the rest of the Germany. And whatever he did only against Jews. Otherwise, he was so good to everybody else. It's not true. The fact remains that what is fascism? You create an enemy, you put your own people in an imaginary siege, and that is how you control them. At the moment, if through all this effort, people are losing their civil rights, people are losing their freedom of expression, or confidence at least, to express themselves, it is not happening to one community. It is not happening to one people.
Do you believe Narendra Modi is a fascist?
Of course, he is. I mean, fascists don't have horns on their heads. Fascist is thinking. And this thinking that we are better than others, and whatever problems we have, it is because of these people. The moment you hate people in wholesale, you are a fascist.
Mahesh Bhatt, let me ask you this. When it comes to Modi and Bollywood, because I do want to talk about your industry, you have Bollywood stars congratulating the Prime Minister on his re-election on Twitter. You have that famous selfie that got so much coverage of a bunch of Bollywood actors, including your daughter Alia, the acclaimed actress, I believe, that they took with Modi. You have the industry's top stars, the Khans and others, completely silent on the citizenship bill, on Kashmir, on the attacks on students. Are you disappointed in some of your fellow artists that they haven't taken the kind of stand that you have?
Well, I can't put myself up as a model and ask them to emulate me. Who gives me that right? But fear is a political tool which has been used since the dawn of time. And we are in the business of entertainment, and mass entertainment content is consumed there in the cinema halls, which become very vulnerable during release time. And these guys have the foot soldiers there to play havoc with people whom they don't like. So individually, an actor or an actress may want to take a stand and be very vocal, but then there's a collective interest of the tribe which is voiced around him or her, that look, it affects the entire unit, it entires the project, there are crows riding on it. So I think that is, they feel very vulnerable, but the explosive silence speaks for itself, that these people are frightened to speak their minds, even if they feel completely different to what they are posturing at privately.
Javed Akhtar, it's pretty indisputable, isn't it, that Bollywood, with a few notable exceptions, is now basically Team Modi?
No, I won't say that, but the fact remains, so many voices are missing. But the fact is that it is the proof that the society is scared. Do all these people agree with him or agree with the philosophy that he is recommending, or his ideology, or they agree with whatever their party is doing? Do they think lynching is wonderful? It should happen more often? Do they really think that? No. And if they don't think that, then why are they not saying it? There is a question. Why they are not saying
What's
it?
your
What
answer? Is it
makes
fear?
them so scared?
Is it purely fear?
It's fear. Purely fear.
Fear of losing their
Because-
careers, or fear of worse than that, fear of physical harm?
Because all those people whom I've seen at the group photo with the Prime Minister, I know them personally and I know what they say.
Are you disappointed then that they seem to be hypocrites?
Yeah, well, no. You see, you can't ask people to become martyrs.
Yeah. Well,
It is their choice.
Okay, so let me put this to you, Javed Akhtar. The government hosted a dinner for Bollywood stars recently to explain why the Citizenship Amendment Act, this controversial act, is a good thing. Presumably so they could have these Bollywood stars act as influencers, messengers. You were invited and you didn't go, but a lot of people did go. How do you push back against that when the government is able...
The fact is a lot of people didn't go. Those who are publicly and actively supporting the present regime, only they were there.
So you have hope.
was not
So
a
you
very
have hope that there's still enough people on your side to kind of resist government propaganda, as it were.
No, I don't think about that. You see, besides that, film industry is a minuscule part of the society. And,
Really?
its influence
Bollywood is a minuscule
Oh,
part of
yes.
India. It's one of the biggest.
I'll tell you how.
Okay.
First of all, its influence is highly exaggerated. Theatre or cinema's influence is highly exaggerated. No country can claim that a revolution or a great social change came into that society because of a film. If it has happened, please let me know.
Let me ask Mahesh Bhatt, you're one of India's best-known directors. You directed something like 50 films. You're a household name. Do you agree with Javed Akhtar there that the role of Bollywood is exaggerated? I mean, right now in India, you have a bunch of very hyper-nationalistic movies being made, movies about the Indian military, about the Indian nation. A lot of people say that Bollywood is producing movies which only boost the BJP's message.
What Javed Saab is saying is that if movies and books could change nations, this nation would have become a paradise by now. Prior to Mr. Modi's arrival on the scene, there were innumerable films made which spoke about coexistence and the plurality that we're under fire today. But yes, they do contribute to create an illusion that the stream is flowing in on their side, and that's what their limited purpose is. But on the ground, I think there are other more serious things which ultimately decide which particular party will rule us. And filmmakers, actors, actresses, filmmakers have a very limited role to play in creating the atmospherics.
Yeah, I'll agree that recently films after films have come that have given a saffron version of history. Some of them did well on the box office, some of them failed. So again, the criteria was not whether they are giving a saffron version or they were not. But the fact is, I must accept at this point that recently there have been quite a few films that had the saffron version, the right-wing version of history.
So let me ask both of you this question. Given that you're saying that the film industry is producing films that seem to boost the right-wing version of what India should look like, given you're both saying that some of your colleagues in the industry are afraid to speak out, given you both are saying that this government right now in India, the world's largest democracy, is fascist, what hope do you have for the future? Is there hope for India, Mahesh Bhatt?
Well, man lives in hope and dies in hope, and we saw that little ray of hope a few days ago in Delhi. I don't think that as long as in the DNA of India, there is plurality, and I don't think that you can reduce a nation as diverse as this to one narrative. If you try to impose just one narrative on this nation, it will revolt, and I don't think any political party can do that in the long run.
Javed Akhtar?
I have unshakable belief in Indian common sense. I believe that even an Indian who is not educated, who is not sophisticated in modern terms, is not a fool. He's a sensible person. Even sensible people sometimes stray up to a point, but then they know that now they are going off the cliff, they come back. And this is also a passing phase. As a matter of fact, it is important because we are living in these times. Otherwise, if you turn the pages of a book of history and by mistake you turn 2 pages, you skip 200 years. So these 10 years, 15 years are not the end of the world. This too shall pass.
Javed Akhtar, Mahesh Bhatt, on that note, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both so much for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's our show. UpFront will be back next week.